And I forgot it. Yes. Okay. And I forgot it.
Ken?
Because I'm old.
Mike's. Good.
Yeah, but about 10 minutes after I leave. Now, did you do this?
Oh dear.
I don't blame you if you did. Oh, there we go. I know.
Commissioner May, Madam President, Commissioners, good afternoon. Commissioner May, over to you.
All right, thank you very much, Director Wong. We're going to start this evening with a work session, and the first item is the City of Cuna presentation. And welcome to you. You were here early, and we're glad you're with us this week.
Thank you, Commissioners. Good afternoon, and thanks for having me this evening for a little opportunity to kind of discuss with you guys one of the many exciting things that we have going on in the City of Cuna.
Well, and we're anxious to hear that. If you could just start with your name and your address.
My name is Jace Hellman. I am the City of Cuna Planning Zoning Director, and our address is 751 West 4th Street, Cuna, Idaho 83634.
Perfect. Thank you.
And am I able to control this from here? Just click the button. Perfect. All right. Okay, so with my time here this afternoon, just want to kind of give you guys a little background of this project that we have going on, the scope of the project itself, and then finally kind of where we're at, and then the schedule that we plan on moving forward on. First, kind of a little background of some of these overpass studies. The request and the concept of an overpass in the City of Cuna is not a new thing by any means. I've reviewed several of the studies that go all the way back to 1995. 1995, 2006, those were not adopted by the City of Cuna as plans that wanted to go forward. But we really started hitting the ground running in about 2012 when we had a downtown corridor plan that kind of went into feasibility of overpasses and how do we circulate people in the core of the town. Fast forward with that plan, and then 2006 to 1995, we identified about 11 potential crossings. Our 2014 crossing feasibility study really honed in on one location. That was at Swan Falls, and for the longest time that was the main location that our leadership wanted to explore, was how we could do an overpass at Swan Falls. Fast forward to about 2018, when we really started a lot of our economic development initiatives and starting to grow that commercial growth. We really wanted to change how we acted with the rest of the region and wanted to do a project that was much more regionally significant and able to kind of set us up for success. And that kind of changes into that priority location was really changed, and we really wanted to start focusing on Meridian Road. As we started to grow, the City of Cuna, we fully expect to basically Meridian Road one day be the center of town. And so this was an opportunity that for our leadership, and they started to look at that as a way for us to get ahead of growth and get in a position for future success. We actually have gone as far as amending some of Compass's transportation plans. Just recently, we submitted a letter to Compass to amend Communities in Motion 2040 2.0 and the Transportation Improvement Program. That went through public comment period about January 3rd to January 17th of this year. And our TAC actually recently voted to recommend approval of those amendments to the Compass board, which I believe will adopt that or vote to adopt that on February 28th. So the study itself, back in September, we went out for an RFP, and through that process ended up retaining JUB and Kittleson Associates to help us through this project. The initial scope of the project really is to explore the realignment of Meridian Road and the Cuna Road intersection. Right now it's currently a giant curve. It actually will explore how we go ahead and realign this into a traditional intersection. And then continue Meridian Road in compliance with our street circulation map and ACHD's master street map across the railroad track and across Indian Creek. Part of this study that we're very excited about, and I don't think we've had with other studies, is actually a development of a funding plan of how the city can actually get this project done. We understand that the monetary amount to complete a project of this magnitude is going to be immense. And so we're excited to actually be able to get a clear path forward on how we get that done. Just with the amount of environmental things we have to do, the national or the federal funding that we're probably going to have to chase after, the amount of agency involvement that we're going to have through this process, we elected to go through the planning and environmental linkages process, which really can help reduce a lot of duplication efforts in the back end and kind of link the planning that's done through this into the environmental and really speed up our back end processes. And it also opens a lot of lines of communication and provides a lot of flexibility for funding opportunities as well. Each area of this is set to do a lot of intersection analysis, as we fully expect once we do open up that Meridian Road corridor to see excess traffic going down there, which will put strain on the surrounding intersections. So we want to be able to make sure that we fully understand the magnitude of this project and what it will do to the intersections around. The other goal is ultimately to connect to Cuna Road, understanding full well once this project is completed, we will probably have to approach ACHD on a partnership of a study of that Cuna Road to try and complete that alignment that's not done. And once that is done, I talked about a regional impact. This will be a complete north to south, east to west connection that goes through Ada County, and it will tie into our industrial area to the east. The city of Boise is also looking at their industrial area, as well as large employers like the prison. So kind of where we're at right now. Not too much left in the presentation, but we did hold our internal kickoff meeting January 27th. There right now, I actually just before I left City Hall sent over my long list of stakeholders that I would like to include several ACHD staff, and we're included in that. We would love to have you guys as a part of that. Our consultants will be beginning their stakeholder assessments and kind of the beginning of that stakeholder kickoff process. We plan on wrapping up this study early 2020 or early December 2022, maybe early January 2023, with full intent to enter into any sort of engineering dollars that we can get to get this project completed or get this project moving forward as soon as we possibly can. We met with our consultants this morning to kind of develop an engineering funding plan as well, to try and A, take the burden off partner agencies, and B, actually see this project come to light. That's kind of the long gist of it. It's in its infancy right now, so there's not a lot of detail, but really this was kind of to let you guys know what we got going on, and this is kind of in the works right now.
All right, very good. Thank you very much. Commissioners, any comments? Or I'm sure. Commissioner Goldthart.
Comments and questions. Comment is, I feel like Cuna is the resiliency capital of Ada County. We don't get requests from Cuna. The last time I think we were approached about anything that benefited the city of Cuna directly was before Snowmageddon, when we contributed a little bit to finish part of the Greenbelt. And it was a pleasure. We've made sure everybody knew that, and it was a good thing. I love it when entities have such a self-sufficient attitude about things, as well as the partnership attitude. I know what this is going to entail. I know what it means to the city of Cuna, and I think you probably have already thought of this, but I haven't mentioned it, so I will. The new transportation funding bill that passed and is getting funded, I believe that the difference that this project and a couple others will make to the city of Cuna will qualify under all aspects of equity under economic development for you to be able to utilize any and all resources through Compass and any of the other partners in this county to obtain some of those funds. And I hope you go for it and go after it hard. That's all I have to say. Just thanks for being here.
Yeah, we appreciate it. Thank you guys again for having me.
Yeah, absolutely. It's an exciting project.
Madam President?
Yeah, Commissioner Pickering.
Jace, do you mind going back to that table slide?
This one?
Yes. Okay. So can you tell me just in a really quick high-level summary, so what would be in this study that it hasn't been already captured in previous studies?
So public input was a part of other studies, but we plan to try and take this to as much level at a higher level that we can. What hasn't happened in a lot of studies is that planning and environmental linkages, where we are trying to get as much of that environmental, that pre-planning done. So when we get to the NEPA, because we fully expect we're crossing water, it's happening, and the federal funding, that those two processes talk to each other, and we don't have to do a lot of redundancy. So this is a much more streamlined process than we've done before. And then furthermore, it's specific. So a lot of the other projects that we've done has been kind of feasibility of 11 different locations, or I think one they did in 2006 was Meridian Road related, but for whatever reason I couldn't find out why our council at that time didn't. I was in high school or somewhere in there, but I couldn't find out why they didn't go forward. But this is a very much a focus, hit the ground running. You know, this is the spot, this is why and how and when, and it's all related just specifically to one location. It's not a broad approach. We're narrowing down the scope tremendously.
Well, and I wanted to say, like, echo Commissioner Goldthorpe's sentiments, that I'm really glad that you're here, because I don't know if you remember, but I was part of the comprehensive planning effort years ago with the city, and I remember the conversation about the overpass, and I was just floored by the safety concerns and lack of access when that railroad is blocking that road. So that was a great learning opportunity for me, and I was really impressed with how you guys included the public in that process. And so I have no doubt that you're going to just continue to build off of that success that you have, and I'm really happy to see that you're going to be growing that. So yeah, just this sounds fabulous, and let us know how we can help.
We'll do, yeah. We would love to have you guys in it, and as we kind of build that stakeholder analysis, I'm sure we'll have several ACHD staff and hopefully some of the commission involved in that. It is a regional project, and that's part of what we're excited about Meridian Road. Is it has the potential to be an ultimate connection throughout the entire county.
Very good. It is a very important project, and I'm glad you're drilling down and really focusing on the environmental planning and having that. I think that's critical to have that ready to go.
Madam President.
Any other, Commissioner Goldthorpe?
This will change the direction of traffic in Cuna and that part of the county. Instead of all emptying this way, be a lot more of it staying there.
Staying over there, yeah. Commissioner McKinney?
If I may, Jace, thank you for the presentation. I'm glad to hear about this and look forward to hearing more. And I guess my only question is, when are we likely to hear from you again? Because I think we want to definitely keep on top of this.
So it's a bit of shocking news probably to some of you, maybe not everyone in this room, but I actually am hitting the Dusty Trail in March. I'm heading back to North Dakota, closer to family. But you will hear from the city again. I'm hoping we'll get a steering committee meeting started in February, and I'd like to have the new project manager that kind of takes over for me. I mean, even if you guys are open to it a monthly or every 2 monthly kind of update on how things are going. I know you'll have staff involved in it and probably commissioners involved that can help or talk to you guys about it, but I would love to kind of get working with Director Wong and get that set up to where maybe we can do something like this every 2 months or every month, just kind of a quick update of, hey, this is what we've done the last month, and this is how it's moving forward.
I think that's critical to have those really brief touch points. Yeah.
Good, thank you.
Yeah, that's a good question. Commissioner Hanson?
Just a quick question. I really appreciate this, Jace. This is tremendous. Commissioner Goldthorpe's been a fantastic advocate for Cuna and has brought this forward, so that just reinforces all the work that's going into it and understanding the circulation that's planned out in the future. My question is, now ITD is 69. Is it going to redesignate 69 directly south? Is ITD going to pick up the responsibility for this, and then we shift so that the other road becomes the ACHD road? What's the envision to
so the
jurisdictions you have to deal with?
And that's probably one of the biggest conversations that will have to happen in the early stages of this project, of who takes over jurisdiction, because A, that's going to affect what that right-of-way looks like, and B, budgets and everything like that. My personal opinion, not that that matters at all, but I mean, to me, by connecting Meridian Road to Cuna Road, you're actually solving the problem that defines what a highway is. And Meridian Road technically doesn't go to anywhere. It's a spur. It was supposed to go to the rail spur because we had one before the city of Boise had one. but right now it doesn't go to anything. And in my opinion, if we transfer right-of-way ownership and it goes to Cuna more, well, now we're getting it sent somewhere, and it is connecting state highways technically, if you think about it. But that's kind of been initially, staff has started to talk about that. There hasn't been much headway, but I think that will be an early conversation in this process to figure out what that looks like, or even if there is a swap.
Yeah, certainly are. Any other comments or questions? All right, thank you very much.
Thank you, guys.
And I'm sure we're going to see you again before you go.
Yes, I
All right.
will
Hit
make
that
an
dusty
effort to be
trail.
out here again.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Okay. Thank you very much for coming. We appreciate it. Give our best to Bear Steer and all the staff back there in Cuna. All right, next on our list, Ms. Christy Inselman, Rose Hill Traffic Calming Concept Study, Kickoff. Always good to see you.
Okay.
I like when you're right here.
I know, right
I
here
get
directly.
to go back.
Good evening, Madam President, Commissioners. For the record, Christy Inselman with the Planning and Programming Department. I'm a Senior Transportation Planner here with ACHD. And I'm here tonight to do a kickoff introduction with the Commission on the Rose Hill Corridor Temporary Traffic Calming Concept Study that we'll also be doing this year. So, this project came about out of the concept study that was approved by the Commission for the Rose Hill and Owyhee intersection. And the purpose is to develop temporary traffic calming measures on Rose Hill between Roosevelt and Vista Avenue that would improve the corridor for all users of that area. The schedule for this concept study is approximately 9 months. And the consultant we have on board is Kittleson and Associate, if you remember, the same consulting firm that did the intersection project for us. So they're well-versed on this area already. So here's just a quick map of what the corridor is and where that falls within everything that's around it. So some of the key destinations in that area is Jefferson Elementary, South Junior High, Monroe Elementary, Sacred Heart Elementary, Boise Depot, and Platt Gardens, Morris Hill Parks. There's quite a few attractors in that area. Rose Hill is in that area is a 2-lane residential arterial. So some of the existing conditions on this corridor, so we kind of have a interesting end caps with this particular corridor. So Roosevelt-Latah, or Roosevelt to Latah is 2 lanes with a center median, a turn lane. And then at the end, Owyhee to Vista, we have the same condition where it's 47-foot wide roadway, back of curb to back of curb, where it's 2 travel lanes and a center turn lane. And then we have this one in the middle from Latah to Owyhee, which is 2 travel lanes, but no center turn lane. And that's approximately 5 feet wide. The entire corridor, we have 5-foot wide attached sidewalk throughout, and there are no existing bike facilities on the corridor. So some of the project's considerations for this, as always, as far as existing conditions can go, there are some really interesting items on this corridor. It is unique in that it's a residential arterial, and it has a ton of front-on housing. So it's predominantly residential in the entire area, which is very unique for an arterial roadway. It also has on-street parking through the entire corridor. That parking is not marked, meaning it's not painted to delineate the spaces, but parking is allowed through the entire corridor. And then there's quite a few local roadway connections into that arterial, which again are not typical. There's 11 connections on the north side of the road, 3 on the south. And then, as you can see, and this was a rough estimate, quite a few driveway connections, which also make it very unique in that there's approximately 83 driveway connections along the corridor. So for project considerations during this concept study, we will be looking at developing a variety of potential, we say temporary / semi-permanent traffic calming solutions along the corridor. And the purpose is to calm traffic, mitigate speeding. Some of those solutions may include chicane, center medians, lane narrowing. So there's a lot of things that we're going to look at throughout this concept study. Obviously, nothing is decided at this point. It's also important that whatever decision we go forward with is going to be supported by the neighborhood. So there's going to be significant outreach to them. The consultant is also going to be looking at doing parking evaluations on the entire corridor. That'll be fairly significant. Review of crash data, and looking at the feasibility of bike facilities along that corridor. As I've already stated, it's tons of front-on housing, tons of driveways, so we'll have to look at what's possible for this corridor. So it's still pretty early on. We'll also be doing some data collection both before and after anything is installed along that corridor to look at speeds, multimodal volumes, what the public sentiment is before and after, so that we know, did we make the right decision? Are we doing the right type of treatment on this corridor? And then we also have to think about what the maintenance implications are going to be for whatever it is that we put out there. So if we've got snow removal or any of those, what can we put out there that can be adequately maintained? So the next steps in our process is the original public outreach, and that's happening at the end of this month, the beginning of March. We'll be holding stakeholder meetings with property owners, schools, neighborhood groups, businesses along that entire corridor. Letters are actually going out in the mail tomorrow that we're going to have individual meetings. Anybody we don't hear from that lives along that corridor, will do individual outreach and door knocking, because we want to get as many people on that corridor involved as possible. They will tell me what they want on the corridor. And then we'll have an online survey in March. And that's just an initial outreach. What are your concerns with this corridor? You know, what do you think we need to include on this corridor? Just some basic, fact-finding mission on that initial survey. Once we have that information, we also will reach out to our advisory committees. We're going to plan probably a walk of the entire corridor with our advisory committees in the upcoming months as well. And after we've had that initial input, we'll have some draft concepts. We anticipate April-June time frame when those would come out, and then final concepts. There will also be additional public outreach on those once we develop some initial concepts for that. And then we'll come to you, obviously, throughout the process on any future commission meetings to fill you in on how that's going, what we're hearing from the public, and then also to get your guys' feedback on what we're seeing so far. So any questions?
I like that periodic updates. I think
Yes.
that's important. And this is really a robust outreach for the
It
public.
is.
We're going to
It's-
get a lot of good public input on this project.
It is a very unique concept that we're doing with this. It's almost a pilot. We haven't quite done one of this nature, so it'll be interesting, and it's a unique corridor, as Commissioner Hansen is well aware. It's a very unique corridor, so it'll be interesting to see what we can come out of that that's going to help. Because I did walk the corridor with Commissioner Hansen, and it doesn't feel great to walk along that corridor. So hopefully there's some things we can have come out of this that are going to make that much better for the public for every user of that corridor.
I want to join you in one of your walk-arounds up there.
Okay.
So when I hear when those are, I'd like to go with you too. So good job. Good job.
Thank
I
you.
like the plan. Any questions or comments for Christy?
I just want to say thank you. This is terrific. I want to say thank you, and I also want to thank the commission for attaching this as a condition onto that one intersection project. I think it really makes a difference. There's a bunch of people in the neighborhood who feel a sense of validation that their concerns are going to be listened to, and so that's really, really good. Yeah, of course, most neighborhoods would say every street's unique, and so it's like, yeah, that's why it's so important to get out there. And I'm really looking forward to this. I also just absolutely love the notion that we're not going to put in concrete yet. We're going to test it with temporary features, and this is a really great way of collecting data. And I really appreciate this, and so thank you all around.
Madam President.
Commissioner Pickering.
Yeah, Christy, could you go back to, I think, maybe one or two slides
How do I
where you
go
talked about
backwards?
the pre and post data?
Just 1 second.
You're good. I can wait.
I'm like, I don't know how to go backwards when I'm up here.
You're fine. Because maybe it was that other one. Maybe it was the second. to
Which one
last
were you after?
It was the one where you talked about just pre and post data. Maybe it was that second to last one, but
It's the,
all
Keep
the
going
steps?
forward. It's under the project's considerations one.
Okay.
I have a lot of
And
data
that-
on that one, so it's
And
kind
my question, there we go. Yeah, so before and after data collection, motor vehicle speeds, multimodal traffic volumes, public sentiment support. I was just really curious if you could expand a little bit outside of just the ones that are in parentheses there, and how long were you going to wait to capture the post or after data, post implementation of certain temporary features?
Well, I mean, obviously, after they're installed and they've been there for some time, we'll go back out. It will follow, the intent for this project is, we'll do the concept this year, and the intent is for the installation to also go in around the same time that we do the Rose Hill and Owyhee intersection. So it's all done at one time, where we're not going back in and out. But once they're installed, we'll go back in. We haven't set a time. That's something that will come out of this process on how long before we go back. But we obviously want to go back when we have the highest usership on some of those multimodal components. So yeah, so likely during school times and things like that, and we'll catch it during multiple times during the day.
That sounds great. It just, I think previously, before I was on the commission, I'd seen a few things where it was like, oh, if there's initial public pushback for like a week or two after we've tried something, that doesn't really correlate to actually behavior change and all of those things, right? People haven't had enough time to actually absorb it.
Yes.
And, the
We won't
initial,
go in the week after.
right. Oh, sorry. Yeah. So I would say at least 30 days would be the best practice. So I just want to make sure that time schedule is considered when you guys do that post data.
Absolutely.
Perfect. And on the side note, this looks fabulous. Very excited.
Thank you.
It really
I'm
does.
excited about this one.
Yeah,
Not that
I
I'm
can
excited
tell.
about my other concept studies, but I'm really excited about this one because it's
Yeah.
unique, and I like
It's new.
to see what we can come out of this. So
Absolutely. All right. Thank you
Amen.
very much, Christy. We
Thank you.
appreciate it. All right, next on our agenda, snow ops for sidewalks and bike lanes. And we'll hear from Jennifer Barringer. Welcome.
President May, Commissioners, for the record, Jennifer Barringer, Deputy Director of Maintenance. 2 weeks ago, we ran out of time to talk about this topic. We printed these out or emailed them to you, so you had them about 2 weeks ago. The presentation on the board is the same as what you've been previously presented. So we can go through this in detail, or if you already have questions queued up, we can, however you
Just
want
a
to
quick
proceed.
refresher, just kind
Okay,
of
just a
go
quick
through it,
refresher.
yeah.
So,
We have time.
this is our mission for winter operations, obviously, to facilitate the safest possible travel conditions for the general public using all our available resources. This is our current inventory. The number of lane miles we have is currently at about 5255 and growing. Lots of cul-de-sacs, and a number of cul-de-sacs increased over the years. Roadway intersections. I also wanted to point out pedestrian ramps, so you know how big the pedestrian ramp inventory is. And then the number of sidewalks, 2,854 miles of sidewalks and growing. Bike lanes, continue to grow our number of bike lanes. Canal bridges and pedestrian crossings over canal bridges, which we've kind of established that the canal, we have an arrangement with the irrigation systems that we are responsible for the maintenance of the pedestrian crossings over canals. And in those overpasses, relationships that we have with I-84, where there are no on or off ramps, such as the Cloverdale overpass. Those are all in our inventory to maintain during the winter months. And these are the resources we use to do it. 63 total units, 44 of them that have the plows attached, 153 team members. We use the sheriff labor detail. We have, and right now that's a fairly small number. They're our primary force to do the manual labor where you don't use vehicles or equipment. We do have on-call contractors. These are the big contractors that we would call in when the snow exceeds our ability to get at those residential roads. The typical snows we get here not usually an issue. We're talking about like the Snowmageddon level, and this was when we developed this contractor on-call. And then a great resource that I know a lot of neighborhoods have been using in order to have HOAs or other neighborhood groupings that want to do their own snow removal, having those license agreements. So we have that partnership and we know which neighborhoods are going to be doing their own plowing.
And Jennifer, we waived that fee, the permit fee.
That is right, no fee for that, absolutely. We have materials on hand. We've got, our magnesium chloride, sand and salt mix, and then the pure salt. And those materials are used in different ways throughout the county. Some areas are no sand areas. Some areas do best with salt. Magnesium chloride is used when temperatures are certain depths when temperatures are at a certain point, so that we can prevent the bond of the ice onto the roadway. So different materials are used in different ways at different times in different places. And these, as a reminder, are our treatment priorities. Yeah. So priority 1, as identified in our policies, are arterials, collectors, major intersections, overpasses, bridges, hospitals, fire stations, railroad crossings, school crossings, and streets with grades over 6%, of which we have a lot. So I do want to point out in our relationship that we've, or the dialogue we've been having with the BAC and their prioritized bike lanes, the bike lanes that they've given to us so far as their priorities are on those arterials and collectors primarily. The Maple Grove one is the only one really that we don't already do as a part of doing those arterials and collectors, and the Maple Grove one is because of the delineators. Yeah. Priority 2 is the school bus routes that the schools let us know about, and then this is also our opportunity to get into some of the neighborhoods. So when we know school is going to be in session, luckily a lot of our snows this year have been over the weekend. We did have that one big snow that lasted about 2 weeks, but that was during Christmas break. So that really helps us to be able to keep our priorities on the priority 1. But when we do need to get into those areas for the schools, that opens it up for a lot of the residentials as well. So they'll start seeing that. And then the priority 3 is to get into the residential streets, including those cul-de-sacs.
Jennifer,
and
Commissioner Pickering.
Yeah, Jennifer, if you don't mind. So thank you for including the BAC priority bike lanes, and I see the note about Maple Grove, but I wanted to ask, I think the feedback that I got from some folks about sidewalks was mostly around, transit corridors, bridges, and then potentially there was another third one I think that was out there, but those were the 2 main ones that I'd heard from the city of Boise. So where would we put, once we refine the sidewalk priority sections as well, where would those fit in this priority list?
President May, Commissioner Pickering, if you'll allow me to go to the next slide.
Excellent.
Oh, please.
Okay.
Thank you, Jennifer.
So this will start to answer the question. It's kind of going to take me a few slides to get into it. So when we talk about snow removal on sidewalks, the city codes put the responsibility on the adjacent property owner. Different city codes have different requirements. Most of them don't put a time limit on it. There is also, I don't know if I can say no enforcement because I can't really speak to exactly how the cities are enforcing that. But I think we do see even now, a month past the big winter one that we had at Christmas time, there are still some neighborhood sidewalks where residents aren't doing things, and so that's on the city side. So it's their city code and their enforcement arm. We don't have an enforcement arm in ACHD. I did mention on canal overpasses by license agreement, the responsibility does rest with ACHD, and we attack those in a priority manner. A lot of those canals, we have them already listed out in a book that are the known areas where we have a lot of pedestrians, and we have it kind of prioritized to be able to attack as we can with the manpower we have. As I mentioned, we use the Sheriff Labor Detail, and we have 2 crews that we can run, but they're very small number of people, and it really depends on what we're able to get for those they're volunteers essentially. When we go to the sheriff, they find who do they have available, who wants to work that day, and then we're able to take them. And then we'll get out and start working our way through those priorities. And generally, it depends. So I don't want to say that we do all the arterials and collectors, because it's kind of a mixture of those areas where it's adjacent to ACHD owned property. It's the canal overpasses. It's some of those priority areas that we know we get telesis on a lot. And we start to attack those as we can. Of the list that they identified, kind of the top 30 in the first wave of priorities, it takes about a week to get to all of those locations, just because manpower, it's all hand shovel, especially when you're talking overpasses. You can't use a machine that's going to blow the snow over the overpass or back onto the street. So a lot of that is hand shoveled and then hand removed to get it off of the sidewalks.
Madam President,
Commissioner Pickering.
Jennifer, quick question to expand on that note. So how long does it take typically, or how many types of overpasses can a crew do in any particular day, do you see?
Obviously, it depends on the amount of snowfall you get. It depends on if the snow is a heavy snow. It depends on how many volunteers we get. So as much as I really knew that question was going to be asked, and me being a numbers person, I wanted to be able to have an answer, and I can't, just because it all depends on so many variables. I think on a good day, you're lucky to get 4 overpasses done, but it depends on how big the overpass is, whether or not there have been footprints over it, how challenging it is. So not a lot is really the answer.
Do you have any inkling about how long it would take the mini sweeper or other equipment similar to it to clear an overpass?
So the mini sweeper, the challenges with the mini sweeper again are size. So that mini sweeper is going to be limited to that kind of that 4 foot, which most of our sidewalks are, but not all of them. So that could move maybe a little bit quicker, but we haven't used it in a snow scenario. When we did the demo, it was in the spring. It was leaves. So I don't know yet on that one. When we get it, we'll be able to test it out and see what we'll be able to obtain based on how well it treats the snow.
Okay, thank you. Thank you, Jennifer.
So the bottom line really is we don't have the equipment or staffing right now to expand beyond our current charge with what we are able to do with the roads and the bike lanes and the sidewalks. So expanding out to start this new pilot, we're going to have to put some resources toward it. And I think we all recognize that that's going to be the way forward. So some thoughts. First, I think we need to define the problem that we're trying to solve. As Commissioner Pickering mentioned, one of those is those priority kind of pedestrian routes, getting to maybe those central bus locations, or pathways to school, or pathways to commerce, or those areas where a lot of restaurants are. So we just kind of need to solve or define the problem. And I think each of the cities are going to have a little bit different flavor on what that problem is that we're trying to solve. Also, is the problem, as this originally kind of, when our snowplows do the roads and they leave a little windrow in front of the pedestrian ramp, is that the problem we're trying to solve? Are we trying to move that snow away so pedestrians can move through? Or are we trying to solve the ramp issue to keep that clear? Or are we trying to solve an entire corridor that we have some piece of equipment run through? Because defining the problem will help us figure out what the equipment or what the solution is. If it's a heavy snow and you need to use a plow and you're running through a sidewalk and you're like, well, we just want to go from this point to this point and run an entire mile. One of those concerns as you're running down a pedestrian ramp is the blade going to get where you want it to go? Is the blade going to cause more problems with the truncated domes? So there are a lot of additional problems that we want to be careful with as we're trying to solve this other problem, those unintended consequences. So the first thing is really define the problem that we're trying to solve, and that'll help us pinpoint what we might need for resources. Consider establishing the joint committee to provide that critical where question. Is it the sidewalks and intersections? Is it a 3-block area in a city? So we help us to define how big the problem is so we can go to where. And then we now integrate the wheres into a priority program. Because like I said, right now, we have the sheriff labor detail, and they have kind of their priority list that they run down. It isn't integrated yet into what the vision is that I think that you're trying to establish for this expanded program. In your dialogue with the cities, should we standardize city codes for sidewalks and for removal? At what point, as an example, you look at the city of Boise and they say sidewalks need to be cleared by 9 a.m. That would be a real challenge to have one organization in charge of clearing all the sidewalks by 9 a.m. It really does speak to why the cities have a code to have the adjacent property owners help with the solution. But then the question is, should you standardize, and to what level do we want to standardize? And how do you define how much snow before they need to come out, or how often they need to plow? Because that all, or shovel, that all kind of helps to inform us how we're going to attack the problem as well. Explore partner operations that assign critical wares to respective city public works, perhaps. I know some of the phone calls that I've been making to other jurisdictions. I called up to Moscow, Idaho, and that one citizen had said they have a great model. Let's look at what they do. I kind of picked their brain. How do you do it? How do you incorporate the sidewalk removal? And the answer that I see in a lot of times, and I think as your research has also shown, when your highway district falls under the city, you have a pool of resources, such as public works or the parks. And that's how they're able to solve it in Moscow, as an example. In fact, their parks department shares the facility with the public works, so they literally can kind of grab somebody and say, "Hey, man, I need some help on this particular sidewalk," and it's very tightly tied in that way. So one of the things that we put out there early on was considering staging ACHD purchased equipment with the cities. There's a lot of considerations on this with who gets how many resources, what do those resources look like, how's the manning going to be tied to that, who does the maintenance on the equipment, what happens when it's off season, what happens if something gets damaged, either our infrastructure or that piece of equipment or another person's vehicle or something. There are just so many considerations that we'll want to consider as we talk through that one. And then another one that we talked about was contracting with landscape businesses. So potentially, once we define what the problem is, if we can actually put it onto paper to say we need this to be done, where and when and how often, setting up that contracting strategy to bring in landscape businesses who may not have other work at that time. A lot of landscape businesses do already do this. A lot of HOAs employ landscape businesses. So that model is there. It would just be a matter of finding somebody who will take on the business and defining it. We looked at the sheriff labor detail, and there's a consideration here where perhaps we could change the model that we have with them. So maximizing the sheriff labor detail during the major snow events, so perhaps we can put money toward them rather than us just going and asking for volunteers. Perhaps this is another mechanism where we contract them, and it makes it maybe more of a priority to hit certain routes with those resources. Temp agencies, if that could be, this one's a little bit more of a challenge. A lot of people don't want to work in inclement weather, but perhaps if you go to a temp agency and say, when we have a snow event, we need these temps, then you have the management challenges that go along with that. Just the balance while we're thinking through these things. You could consider expanding our full-time equivalent employees and our equipment. That would expedite perhaps the canal overpasses and sidewalks and things that we're talking about. It puts a little bit more of the onus on us to get it done versus contracts or relying on other people. So that's an option. We're already seeing, since I mentioned the temps, we see continual problems finding temps. A lot of people don't want to do the temporary work. They're looking for more of the full-time work. So that's, as we're talking about the FTE, the full-time equivalents, perhaps that balances out the issues that we tend to see on the temps. But if we bring in the full-time equivalents to handle specifically this problem with this winter call out, that could potentially solve the problem that we continue to have with our chip seal looking for temps during the summer months. So perhaps that could solve multiple problems. One of the cities had mentioned bulk purchases. I think it's maybe a little bit aside from solving this particular problem, but it's definitely something that we can look into as we're purchasing salt, and we have our sand from our crushing operations. Are there opportunities for the cities to partner with us to leverage our bulk buying and maybe reduce some of their costs as well, which then could maybe open up some other cost avenues for additional resources to
And
tackle
Jennifer,
this
that
problem.
one meeting that we had with the mayors, I think there was some interest in leveraging resources.
Yeah, I
like
think that was actually proposed by one of the cities.
Mhm.
Yep. There are other volunteer possibilities that we could start reaching out to if we wanted to, hit Boy Scouts, Girl Scouts, high school key clubs, just see if there'd be any interest in those to get out and just help out. I think there are logistic challenges with that, but I don't want to close the door to the possibility that maybe we're not looking broad enough for resources. And then I already kind of alluded to this, the potential unintended consequences. As we're solving one problem, we might be unintentionally creating new problems and additional challenges, especially with the types of snows that we get here. A lot of times Mother Nature just kind of knocks that out for us. But I want to make sure that we are doing all that we can, especially with the MIG report that puts a little bit of onus on us, that we are having the dialogues and that we're looking into these things and that we're starting some of the pilots, because I think it's definitely a good place to start. And this is the first step in that, having the entire commission together and hear your thoughts on what you want ACHD to do to help solve some of these problems.
Absolutely.
So I just went many slides in the wrong direction. So I'll stand for any questions.
Our turn.
Madam President.
Thank you very much, Jennifer. Commissioner Pickering?
And Jennifer, I really appreciate the presentation, and I was wondering, and I really appreciate you saying, we need to define the problem, because that'll help us define how we, make this work, right, to serve our communities better. And I wanted to think back about the MIG report, because I think that really defines some really key points about what the problems are that we're perpetuating. And so I just wanted to see if there are any particular ones that come to mind for you about what are some of those particular problems that we are entitled and supposed to be solving. Because ramps was, I think, one of them.
Do you want me to answer? I mean, I have an opinion.
I'd love to hear your opinion, Jennifer, to be honest.
So the MIG report does talk about what is in our responsibility. When you talk about the sidewalks, maintenance, big maintenance is our responsibility. We go out, we handle trip hazards, we replace and repair. When we talk about snow removal, while it is our ultimate responsibility, we do leverage heavily the other resources, such as what the city ordinances put out with adjacent property owners. I think if we can increase some of that communication with the adjacent property owners, that's going to handle a lot of your sidewalk issues. You could expand it out even to specifically say that adjacent property on the corner does the ped ramp as well, because technically that's part of the sidewalk that should be within their scope to handle. The one area where it starts to get blurry is when we're clearing the roads and we have a windrow of snow. We square up our plows, and what that does is, we're pushing snow off to the side, then we square the plow, and that keeps as much of the snow on the plow blade as possible as we're passing through the intersection, because we don't want to leave a big windrow over the intersection either. So squaring it up before we hit that ped ramp is huge to help that accessibility issue. But I think part of the concern is, what is an accessibility issue? And everything that I've done in my research is showing that when you talk about ADA compliance, accessibility, there's a leniency to allow some level of, you have a certain amount of time to make it right, but it's very ambiguous about how long it takes to make it right and what wrong really is. So when you talk about snow, a lot of jurisdictions do see snow as a temporary obstruction. And if you look at the snow that they get out east, if you've ever lived out east, I've lived in Boston where you get the nor'easters, and that cripples a city. That's definitely one of those accessibility issues where people cannot get anywhere. The types of snows that we tend to see here, it's still accessible. A person can still get from point A to point B. So I want to make sure that the problem that we're solving is actually an accessibility problem. And I think what we see isn't a big problem. We want to do better, and I know that that's what I'm hearing from you. We want to do better. So from my perspective, figuring out how to, so that we're not putting, and it isn't our policy to put snow onto the sidewalk, but it's one of those, it's got to go somewhere. So when we're on the road, it goes as close to the gutter pan as possible, not on the sidewalk. We don't plow anything onto sidewalks. That usually happens from other resources, people plowing parking lots and things like that. So I don't have a clear answer to answer your question, because I don't see it as a problem, if that's...
Well, that's certainly illuminating, and I respectfully disagree.
I understand.
Yeah, and especially when I'm thinking about when I was on the pedestrian advisory group, and as a group, when we had Snowmageddon and other snow events in and around that time, especially, and this is just one example that comes to my mind here, looking at connections downtown that go to State Street in the north end. And granted, to your point, these are businesses that are responsible for the adjacent sidewalk, right? But we would plow that snow and it would go onto the sidewalk, and there was all of this, just now it's, baked in, it's hard, it's rock solid. There's kids trying to go to the YMCA, right? So that did create a huge accessibility issue, and that we were responsible for because we made it worse. So you're right, we have different snow events, but that doesn't get us off the hook. And we've had huge issues with accessibility, especially in these priority routes when it comes to sidewalks and bike lanes that have been discussed. So it's good to know, but I think that we do have a long ways to go. And I think just some of my thoughts after looking at the PowerPoint, the presentation, I feel like the next steps, and Commissioner May and the entire commission, I'm looking to you guys to see if you guys think this is okay. But I feel like having a follow-up meeting with the cities would be really appropriate after the legislative session is over, and have you present again, if that's all right. Because I think having that standardized conversation around sidewalk, but we need to have a level set of expectations. All of our cities were confused. I think, citizens were like, oh, it's this in one city, it's this in another city, right? Having some sort of standardization, I think, is a really warranted conversation. And then, of course, I think we should be talking about how can we, on our end, purchase and buy equipment that's going to help us to do the things that we are responsible for, which are the overpasses at a minimum, and additional parts as well. So those are my first two initial inklings, and looking to see what you guys think.
I think we definitely, and I think that's where we left it when we met with the mayors, that we were going to circle back with them. And I think we're still waiting for some information from some of the cities, but we can probably ascertain that when we get everybody back together. But I think that's exactly where we need to go, and have Jennifer come in. And I really appreciate that you incorporated a lot of the comments that they made at that initial meeting. So that's good. And I think that will help spur some more conversation. And
Madam President, when we were going through all this and the solutions, and you indicated hiring it out like to landscapers and that sort of thing, I think that's a wonderful idea. But the weird thing that went through my mind at the time was that if we hire a bunch of people to shovel snow, we're going to be increasing our workman's comp claims exponentially. I've had two friends of mine this year, in not a bad snow year, but two of them this year that in their 40s that have had heart attacks and died shoveling heavy snow, and we don't need to pile that kind of liability on us or the cities. So,
to counter that, Commissioner Goldberg, I totally understand the cost of that, but people are getting hurt just walking on and biking our roadways because we don't shovel or remove the snow.
Well, I understand that, but,
that's a cost.
Not to us. That's what I was referring to, was to us.
lots to discuss. Mr. Price.
Thank you, Madam President, Commissioners. For the record, Steve Price, General Counsel. As typical of Jennifer, she's done a great presentation, very detailed and very well thought through and very analytical on the operations end of snow removal. And Commissioner Pickering, you're right on the compliance end. There's an accessibility there are big issues. I've talked to the director about it, and I would encourage you, before you have a meeting with the cities, that we have an executive session where we can discuss some of the compliance and legal issues surrounding it and strategies going forward, which might bid well in developing interagency agreements with our partnering agencies. There's some things that we can do to set a framework, but I think the goal at the very end is to make sure that we have an intelligent, thorough, strategic plan for accessibility during snowstorms. And yeah, every snowstorm is different, but accessibility is always impacted at some different level for a different time period. And I think it's important we talk about that offline or in executive session. A lot of it's legal advice. And, you know, one of the problems, Commissioner Hanson, is that
I'm always the problem.
you're not the problem. But you've raised the issue before, and that is that when the Ada County Highway District was formed, it split sidewalks, if you will, in terms of regulatory authority in half. While we have the maintenance responsibilities for sidewalks, the city jurisdiction, since we don't have any police power, over sidewalks, the cities have retained that police power. And so, for instance, hot dog stands on sidewalks and ATMs and all those different things, they regulate all of that. And we don't have any enforcement authority. And so it really is going to take a strong partnership with those agencies to bring in some of that enforcement. Now, I'm not talking about going out and write everybody tickets, but to have a clear understanding, and countywide, we have a strategic plan. Right now, it's fractured. Nobody's really got their hands around it, and I think this is a good time to try and bring all that
There appears to be
together.
a lot of confusion, you know,
Yeah.
of who does what, who's on, yeah.
Yeah, and I think that once we develop a good strategic plan and we have it in place and we can make sure that it's ADA compliant, that will impact what Jennifer's presented to you from an operation standpoint. I just wanted to add that because you're talking about a joint meeting, and I think.
Yeah, absolutely. No, I think that would be good to regroup as a commission in executive session, understand just exactly, you know, the unintended consequences, what we can do, liabilities, et cetera, come out with some sort of concrete plan, re-engage with our city partners, and then go forward from there. So,
Madam President, may I ask
Commissioner
just a
McKinney.
quick question? Jennifer, just to make sure that I have a clear understanding of everything we're talking about, when we're referring to canal crossings with respect to sidewalks and bike facilities, are we talking about the pedestrian and bicycle facilities that are connected to or associated with highway bridges over canals? Or are we talking with separate pedestrian bicycle crossings of canals?
President May, Commissioner McKinney, associated with the roadways.
Okay.
So where you have a roadway and then an adjacent sidewalk, a lot of times they're separated by by Jersey rail. So it's not something that our typical plows would get to. You actually have to get in and hand shovel over those.
Okay, all right.
The infrastructure falls on us for maintenance.
Yeah, okay. You know, just one thought as we're going through all of this. A few years ago, I had some family members had to travel up to Canada in the wintertime for a funeral, and they came back and they mentioned that the city of Calgary, Alberta, has zero snow removal equipment of any kind. They don't have snow plows, they don't have anything. When winter comes, the snow falls, and the people just drive on it. And individuals shovel their walkways, and businesses shovel their sidewalks, and everyone just deals with it. And one of the things I think that we have to be cautious with anytime we're talking about snow maintenance is that some of this we need to recognize ought to be just left to the people. You know, if neighbors have the understanding and recognition that, you know, we're kind of responsible to watch out for each other and to help, you know, shovel sidewalks as needed, especially if we got, you know, an elderly neighbor here or one in a wheelchair here. Those kinds of things actually, they have two great benefits. Number one, they're a lot cheaper than trying regulatory and forceful measures. And number two, you end up with a stronger community because of them. That kind of solution doesn't work everywhere, but I think we need to be cautious in automatically going to the sort of heavy-handed and very expensive solutions when in every case that might not be the right way to go.
thank you very much. I think we've got some good things though with the leveraging of the resources. I know the city of Eagle was talking about that, placing some of our equipment there, and having some type of agreement with their, paths and parkways, departments. I think we got that input from one city. So I think there's some areas where we can, step in and make a difference and partner and get some things addressed. I think there are a few things we've talked about, getting the smaller, pieces of equipment to come in and do those bike lanes. So I think there are some things we can do really with not a whole lot of additional costs, and like I say, leveraging those resources. So I think it's an important discussion to have. So
Thanks. Madam President?
we'll go forward with that. Commissioner Hanson.
Thank you. I just want to extend a tremendous thanks to you, Jennifer. Having seen us go through this for a long period of time, one of the best things that we've implemented in more recent years is the whole tracking process, so people know where the trucks are, and that sort of forces them to then, oh, you have a priority system. Yeah, we do. And what that does is it manages expectations. I think most people understand this is nature. It's going to happen. It's not going to be resolved. I'm not going to shovel my own walkway until I know, okay, it's not going to just dump on it over the next couple of hours. So people understand we have to manage expectations. They also understand there's private responsibility for adjacent property and that there's going to be gaps. And in some places, maybe the private folks will help fill those gaps. And what I really like is that the way in which you're thinking as we partner with cities and private property owners is that we have a map that says, these are the priority routes. We'd love to do them all. We can't. You understand why we can't. These are the priority routes. These are what we'd like to get to within so many hours. And so people know. They can look on that map and say, okay, these are the priority maps, routes. And then if there's a gap, they can say, oh, something's happened. Maybe this gap needs to be filled, and that's how we learn. And maybe a homeowners association can cover one of those bridges if we can't get to it faster, because it connects two pieces of private. So there's lots of things, and I think the way in which we can manage expectations with the mapping and the routes that we've already figured out, when people know where the plows are and, oh, one's coming my direction, then there's less worry that, oh, nothing's going to happen. So I think this was excellent, and I really appreciate it. It's a huge task. Kudos to the commission for moving forward on what might have been kind of a scary venture, hiring MIG and doing that analysis. But that was highly responsible of us, and so it's highly responsible for us to now figure out how to navigate this. So kudos to you.
Thank you.
Well deserved.
And President May, Commissioner Hanson, if I can add one more thing, this winter we've also kind of increased our use of social media to show the community that we're out there. It's always been there, but we've really been really trying to focus a lot on making sure that the community knows when we're out plowing, when we're out doing the streets, and we've started to expand out to where our sheriff labor detail has been doing some of the sidewalks, so the community knows that this is part of the whole picture of making sure that the commuting public, that everybody who needs to go from point A to point B has that way to get there. So work in progress, continuing to grow, continuing to get there. And I do know that there are opportunities to do more.
And it is important to get that message out there, because I really do think there's so much confusion about who does what. And I think we've done a super job with our social media and getting it out through Nextdoor and through the cities.
Yeah, kudos to our
And yeah, there she
communications
is,
department.
with Shandy. I mean, down to making sure that they get out there and clear the ice and snow off the drains. You know, that's a huge thing. I know it's big in our neighborhood from Snowmageddon. At 7 o'clock at night, you can hear everybody out there chipping the ice. So communities, I think, will come together, but we need to really get the messaging out there and educate them. So thank you very much for putting all this together. So I look forward to our conversations now going forward. You've given us a great framework to work from.
Thank you.
All right, thank you, Jennifer. All right, Director Wong, hard act to follow.
That's right, I'm ready. Commissioner May, it's a little after 5:30, so over to you.
Oh, okay. All right, we'll go ahead and start with our pre-commission. Are there any general housekeeping ideas, concerns, issues, questions?
Yes, Madam President. I understand that item number 4 has been asked to put onto the regular agenda.
Hold on just one sec. Anything before we get to the agenda? Nothing?
No, I just asked a question. I'm not intending to ask that I do.
Okay, now
I
we're,
appreciate the correct.
Okay, hold on one sec. Now we're to the agenda. Go ahead, Commissioner Goldthorpe.
Okay, I understood that it was being, the item number 4 was requested to go on the regular agenda, but now I understand it's not.
Right.
No, I appreciate the director answering my questions.
Okay.
And also, it helped to have a terrific presentation by Cuna.
Okay, good, because I was gonna ask that it be deferred otherwise, so now I won't. Because I won't be able to be here for the regular commission meeting.
Okay, all right. Any other questions or comments, concerns about the agenda? All right, hearing none. Director Wong, over to you.
Madam President, Commissioners, thank you. Commissioner Hanson, thank you again for asking that question early so we could get back to you. We really appreciate that.
I appreciate that, and, you know, just sort of, I think, I'm looking forward to hashing through the Master Street map at a future meeting.
Well, Commissioners, my director's report is going to be a little different today. It's going to have really basically nothing to do with the Ada County Highway District and such, but what I'd like to do is give you a summary of an event that Commissioner May, Aaron from Communications, Ben, and I attended, and that was the Idaho Chapter Chamber Alliance event on Monday and Tuesday of this week. I want to give you a brief summary because it was well worth the time that we spent, and I think Commissioner May would agree with that. And there are some additional ACHD opportunities that I personally learned about that I didn't know about prior that I will share with you that may be beneficial for us, not only from a people perspective, but from a financial perspective moving forward. First off, we listened to the Career Technical Education of Idaho presentation. Absolutely great group, and we may be actually able to tie into their program under the aspect of our intern to hire program, as this group focuses on mechanics, welding, and some other project management, HR skills. HR is reviewing this right now, but we did not realize that this group had an opportunity, had the opportunity to go out into the public and offer this types of training with some not guaranteed next steps, but some guarantees. And if we can leverage that, we might be put on a better footing as we go forward.
Commissioner Goldthorpe?
And Director, I think you might wish to feel free to utilize any degree of leverage that my name can provide with Clay. I know the guy like a brother, and fully believe in and support in the program that he leads for the state. Mm-hmm. And if we can get something good going for the Ada County Highway District out of that, get it done.
Yeah. Madam President, Commissioner Goldthorpe, thank you. We will take you up on your very gracious offer. Again, HR is reviewing top to bottom on what this team can offer, and listening to the presentation, I know we were very impressed with that.
And their official launch, he said, what, July? So
yes.
We're getting in good time here.
We had a legislative leadership discussion panel composed of Senators Winder and Stennett, and Speaker Bedke and Representative Ruppel. It was a good panel, lively and such, and I will share with you that all are somewhat optimistic at this point regarding where the legislature is and where the legislature may be going. Again, this is early, but all were optimistic. They all agreed on focusing on education, infrastructure, and teacher pay and teacher health care. As a matter of fact, when the governor was there, he announced that he was signing that the teacher health benefit plan that afternoon, and so that is a done deal. There were disagreements on tax relief targets and amounts on education. Some said that we have a long way to go. Others were saying that we've taken a tremendous great step as we move forward. There was a disagreement on the current internet sales tax distribution. And Commissioner May, that was a good discussion on that. Because the current internet tax sales distribution does not mirror the brick and mortar sales tax distribution. And so one side of the aisle was comfortable, the other side of the aisle was not. A fair comment on that.
Comment.
And so I expect more discussions on that as we go forward, and it had to do with the 11% distribution of where those dollars go and where they don't go, based on brick and mortar and internet sales tax. We had a great discussion, and I've given you, ironically, but you have this in front of you, from former U.S. Attorney, the General Bart Davis, always a great speaker and such, and he had a great quote to start with, and it was, "If you are ever asked to be on a redistricting commission, say no," and such. He had a lot of stories about the trials and tribulations, but what he did emphasize was that right off the bat, the first thing that the group did was to go out to lunch and to just get to know each other, as opposed to, and there was the rules of engagement was no discussion about redistricting, none whatsoever, and just to get to know each other, which I thought was always a great deal. As I said, I shared that handout to you, and that outlines both the congressional and the legislative plans as directed as how redistricting will work. For ACHD, we are still awaiting the precinct finals determinations, and at that time we will receive the official map from Ada County, which gives us the formal authority to examine ACHD districts. We had a call in today. We have not received the information yet, so they're still working on it. And of course, we continue to ask Ada County about an estimated time and such when we can get that back, but that's not done at this point.
Madam President?
Commissioner Goldthorpe?
Yes, just a question, Bruce. When that particular plan is approved, and I've been looking at the proposed plan, will it include the population data? Because the proposed plan doesn't have any population data on it.
Okay. I think we'll have to compare it to the census, if I'm not mistaken. Yes. And such, but we'll make sure that you all are fully briefed with everything we know when we know it. But I just wanted to make sure the commission understood at this point, we don't have a go to look at any of this yet.
Only reason I was concerned was because they usually don't have the population and data updated until August of every election year.
And I just want to commend the commissioners for understanding that we're not to be involved in that. And so we know that you'll come to us when you're ready with that information. And so thank you all very much for honoring that.
We had a great discussion on property tax reform. Senators Jim Rice and Representative Moyle spoke on this and emphasized that the legislature does not receive property tax revenue. I think that was said several times. Is that correct, Commissioner May? And that any concern should be addressed to the taxing districts and such. They did note that they have work to do, and there's more things that they're going to be looking at under this year's property tax review. But they said that they were fixing last year's foregone loophole with RS 29256/S1249, which will again reset and clarify what the rules of engagement should have been from the get-go when it comes down to property tax. I do have a copy of that RS. I have one copy if any of you would like to take a look at it. If all of you do, we're more than happy to electronically send it to you and such as we go forward. The governor was there, and his focus remains on education, infrastructure, growth, and modernizing roads. We learned that there is a proposed $50 million in his budget in daycare support, which was not there before. We are, as of yesterday when we came back, we were already looking to see if this can be leveraged to supplement ACHE's current daycare stipend. Again, thank you, commissioners, through the Idaho Workforce Program. Didn't know this existed, didn't know that this was, the money is there, and there didn't seem to be any restrictions on what type of business or groups could go out and leverage that. So we are going to look into that very, very quickly and very hard. There is a proposed $50 million in workforce housing support, and this is led by the governor's Workforce Housing Coalition. I do have another handout on that to give you a little background as to who they are, what they do, and it's a great proposal. The governor believes that if the legislature passes or approves the $50 million, that could wind up to 1,000 workforce housing opportunities throughout the state. And he did emphasize that it is not targeted at one area or another. It was going to be through his operation, through the Workforce Housing Coalition, targeted to ensure that as much of that was spread out across the state as possible. I gave you another handout out there, and it was under the Idaho Workforce Development Program. A lot of great information in there. If you, and again, we learned a couple things out there. And this is funded by ARPA this year. And according to their speaker, their normal budget is $10 million per year. They have $110 million this year to execute across the board. And we learned a couple of interesting things, that under the Idaho Workforce Development Group, which again we didn't know about, they actually pay $5,000 for folks to get a CDL. Now, we're going to attempt to leverage that. Again, when it comes down to drawing or recruiting people into the program, again, we have a ways to go on this one, but the money's there. We use CDLs a lot here at the district, so I've asked HR and the team again to look into this very quickly. They have funded and I think I shared with you a little earlier, the Truckers Simulator, which all of you will get to drive here shortly. I understand the governor already crashed it and such, but that is a great opportunity for all of us, our GEOs, to again hone their skills when it comes down to simulated operations. And again, we are also exploring all opportunities here to include leveraging the Idaho Launch Program, which again provides, which we didn't know, classified folks based on their skill levels who are that can be matched to certain jobs. So if we go to this group and say we're looking for 14 mechanics, 3 welders, and whatever, they by their presentation are able to match folks that are in the pipeline to give to us for consideration, or businesses for consideration. This, as I think I shared with you several months ago, could, and I understand could, dramatically decrease recruiting budget, because to recruit one person successfully is $15,000 for every time, based on staffing costs, these sort of things. So that was very informative, very interesting for us. Transportation funding was a panel, and it was Senator Den Hertog, Representative Palmer, Brian Ness, and Scott Stokes. And of course, you know, Brian is retiring in May, and Scott Stokes will be taking his position as the director for ITD. I think you may already have a fairly good handle on this, but the panel announced, and by the way, the transportation panel that was there was very collegial and very happy of where they have come this year already with transportation focus and funding. More to come, but very, very happy. The governor's proposed $200 million one-time funding for bridges and railroad crossings going through the LTAC distribution methodology. Now, great, but I would not expect ACHD to receive very many dollars out of this specific fund, because our bridges are in great condition. And this is focused across the state and such, where on smaller things, culverts, smaller bridges across, pardon, the governor did make a comment when he said that. He kind of looked at Commissioner May and said, yeah, ACC, you guys are special.
Yeah,
you guys are
special.
good.
I was going to remind you of that.
Yeah. So again, this is a tremendous initiative for Idaho on this $200 million, but I wouldn't expect that the Ada County Highway District will be receiving many of those funds based on where our infrastructure already is. The governor's also proposed a $200 million going forward per year allocation, again, for maintenance, and that is $120 million to ITD, $80 million to the locals for maintenance through the highway distribution methodology. The panel was not concerned. They were they seemed to be very confident that this would continue to go through, and so we'll keep you posted on that. ITD, their focus here going forward is on increasing and expanding capacity. The comment was about old two-lane roads are not safe nor meet growing capacity. Must be widened to meet growth and increase safety. So that is their focus moving forward for the state. Now, that being said, ITD has already five bonding projects that are already in the works, planning works and stuff, with several of them here in Ada County through the TECM process. As a matter of fact, we know, and I hope I'm not jumping ahead too far, Justin, but one of those projects most likely is going to be the Big Star Chinden project, multi-million-dollar issue that we've received word on, that as opposed to starting next year or the year after, ITD would like to start now. And so we're working with them to make sure that happens. Again, these are big deals. Currently, the sales tax legislation, according to the panel, has already generated $29 million for the local. The expectations is that it will continue to grow through the Idaho's calendar year, which ends in the end of June, I think it is. And so right now they're seeing, based on increased sales tax, great margins coming forward, and this will go through the normal distribution process. And of course, we'll see some of that when it comes in. But I do want to remind the commission, we have not seen a penny of the TECM dollars yet. We expect those probably in June, July, as we go forward. The panel noted that the recent and proposed federal funding for infrastructure, which is a great thing, and we all know, but has many strings attached to it, to include specific criteria to be awarded, which includes, interesting enough, the number of union construction workers. We have union construction workers in Idaho, but we don't have that many of them, and environmental impacts. So the flavor of the panel was that the expectations are very little, that very little will come to Idaho when it's all said. That's based on the criteria that's been set out, all the things you have to go through, and such. And so we'll keep watching that. But that was an interesting insight from the folks that work this day to day. We had a presentation from the U.S. Chamber of Commerce. That was our keynote speaker. Great gentleman. And his focus was that private enterprise is doing great despite the pandemic and such. And the example he gave was about beer. He said that when he was a child, he had two jobs. One was to change the channel for Dad, because there was no such thing as remote things. I know some of us have probably had that job. And the second one was to get Dad a beer whenever he asked for one. So he'd go to the refrigerator, and it was an easy choice, Bud or Coors. That was it. He says, if today the magnitude of choices of just for beers, from craft beers to all sorts of different types of beers that all the companies make, is phenomenal. And that is why private enterprise continues to do incredibly great, and is seen to be continuing to head up in the positive area. All in all, commissioners, this was well worth our time, and well worth the dollars that we put into this, and we came back with some ideas and some insights that we didn't know existed prior. So we'll be leveraging those, exploring those, and we'll keep you posted on what we learn, and then maybe what we don't learn as we go forward. As for legislative updates, there are two things that we want to keep on the radar scope. The first one is the Dig Once the proposal that Representative Green and Senator Crabtree are working. As Commissioner May knows, we had a good session with them, General Counsel, myself, and our lobbyist, to talk about the impacts and perspectives from the Ada County Highway District's view, and they were very supportive of what they'd like to see this legislation look like. Unfortunately, we learned yesterday that several incumbents have kind of thrown their weight behind the fiber companies, and so there's a difference of opinion regarding what the real rules of engagement should be, what type of funding there should be, what type of regulatory items there should be. We have re-engaged through our lobbyist again, and I'm confident Senator Crabtree and Representative Green were very happy with our concerns and our additional comments, and they're still fighting the good fight. So it's something we need to watch going forward. Again, based on Gary's presentation to you last week of the challenges involved with this here at the Ada County Highway Now, there's a bill, HB 528, I'm gonna ask you to watch, and such. This is what I'm calling a Federal Express bill that allows autonomous vehicles of up to 550 pounds, to be able to access and run in the right of way, and such, roadways, sidewalks, you name it, across the board. We have sat down, with our lobbyists and raised serious concerns about this. Concerns, ranging everything with conflicts with bikes and pedestrians, ADA implications, and as important, added driver distractions. Because right now, if you see little robots running around in the roadway, we already have enough challenges when it comes down to focusing for all users and operations. This will add another level of complexity, to the driver. The other thing that we raised, and it's really not that far out there, and that is the issue of, I'm going to say, weaponizing these autonomous vehicles and such. In other words, the concern is ensuring that there's a proper amount of security around those, that they have the appropriate rules of engagement, because as some would say, these could potentially be roving IEDs in the public right of way. And in today's world, I think it's important to at least have that discussion before a bill comes out and such. So we understand that we'll have a opportunity to meet with a couple of the folks here in the near future to discuss these. We've given Ben concerns, and Ben is running that as our lobbyist across the board, and we'll keep you posted. But I truly believe these two bills bears the commission's attention as we move forward. So commissioners, with that, that's my director's report for today. I'll stand for any questions you might have.
Thank you very much. Any questions?
Oh, and Commissioner May, did I miss anything on the?
No, I think you.
Okay.
Yeah.
Madam President, I do have one question. Director Wong, on the ITD Star Chinden project, what's the kind of 100,000-foot view of that? What's the general plan for that? What are they doing?
I'm bringing you the 100,000-foot person.
Okay.
Welcome, Mr. Lucas.
Good evening, Madam President, Commissioner McKinney, members of the commission. For the record, my name is Justin Lucas. I'm the Deputy Director of Planning and Project Management here at the Highway District. So ACHD, in coordination with ITD, and this is an ITD-led project, you know, they're doing a lot of work on Chinden Boulevard, and this is extending further west. As part of their work, they are going to be expanding the Chinden and Star intersection. As part of that project, ACHD, we participate because it's a shared intersection. There's a portion of it that's Star Road and a portion that's Chinden. So we participate with signal infrastructure. We're going to be participating with some lane expansion, primarily right turn lanes being added at our approaches, and other improvements just in the area around the intersection that we'll be working with them on. We've done this at Locust Grove, we've done this at Meridian, we've done this at most of the other intersections along Chinden.
Okay, so nothing particularly unusual, just an expansion and rebuilding of the intersection. Okay.
Correct.
Great, thank you.
Thank you. All right, no further comments or questions. It's 6 o'clock. So welcome everyone to the February 9th ACHD Commission meeting. Please stand and join us for the Pledge of Allegiance.
One nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
All right, our first item of business is to adopt the agenda. Is there a motion?
So moved?
Second.
All in favor? Aye.
Aye.
Motion carries. Consent agenda. Items on the consent agenda are considered to be routine and will be enacted by one motion. There will be no separate discussion on these items unless a commissioner or citizen so requests, in which case the item will be removed from the consent agenda and placed on the regular agenda. All consent agenda items are commission action items unless noted. Is there a motion?
Madam President, I move to approve the consent agenda.
Is there a second? Second. All right. All in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye. Right. Motion carries. We have no items on our regular agenda. That takes us right down to public communications. Spencer, do we have anyone that would like to address the commission?
I didn't reach out to the people in the Zoom, so let's give anybody a minute that would want to
Answer?
testify, but I do not see anybody.
No hands raised?
Hands raised.
Madam
All right.
President,
Oh, Commissioner Pickering?
while you're waiting, I do have a couple discussion items to talk about.
All right.
Just tell me when's the right time.
Nobody's, okay, you're cleared in. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Madam President. So hi, rest of the commission. I want to take this time to just bring up a couple of items that are timely, and I think they dovetail really nicely into the director's report and what previously we discussed at our last week's meeting. So the first one is, with all of the funding that's coming down from the federal government, there's a lot of conversation about raise grants. There's lots of different funding opportunities. And in talking with staff, I had a good meeting with the mayor of Garden City last week, and just talking about what are the priorities, how can we leverage this unprecedented time in our nation's history to get some more funding into our communities. And I was just talking to Justin about kind of where our staff currently working on some of these grants, and I know that there's work happening on State Street with VRT in the city of Boise. There's work being done on 5 Mile. And what's interesting to the director's point is, there's this perception that Idaho may not be eligible for funding, but if you dig into some of the data and the research, Garden City in particular is uniquely poised to fit a lot of and check a lot of boxes from a population in poverty and all sorts of indicators. So basically I wanted to say that I think we need to be really strategic about where our staff and our strategic mission for where should we go to address which funding opportunities and when and for which projects, especially if they can alleviate certain budgets off of our integrated 5-year work plan. So just wanted to just kind of pose a question to all of you to have that strategic discussion with staff input and guidance, and know also where are the city's priorities and what other applications are they putting in, so then we can be better informed about where we put our resources.
Very good. We are in the process of confirming our joint meetings with the cities, so that's a good opportunity to bring that up and find out what they have on their radar.
Great point.
So,
Great.
Mr. Price.
Madam President, Commissioners, I just wanted to bring up a point that under Idaho Code, I think it's 40-515, ITD has a committee that they put together on public transportation in Idaho. Oddly enough, ITD has a lot of authority in public transportation, and they have a committee, and it's one is Head Start, which I think they're trying to amend the statute, and there are other state agencies that participate in this. And one function of that is that committee is very focused on leveraging against a lot of the public transportation dollars that are out there and trying to get those into Idaho. So whatever direction we go, maybe it might be advisable to we most certainly can participate in that committee. They have ex officio members that are allowed to participate. They have statutory members as well. But it may not be a bad idea, instead of duplicating a lot of the research. I'm sure that committee and ITD staff are getting well versed in the potential of federal public funds. I just want to make you aware of that. I wasn't sure if you did, but I did see something the other day where that committee starting to fire up and get very focused on the issue that you brought up tonight.
Well, that's really comforting and good to know. Thank you, Steve.
Thanks. Yeah.
Yeah, I would love more information on it.
Madam President, if I could just do a quick follow-up. Your staff is already reaching out to other staff members to see where there was commonality and where there may be opportunities. One of the things we're already initially raising is this may be a tremendous opportunity for pedestrian infrastructure. I hate to say it this way, but like a massive sidewalk project across all of Ada County, not just in one area and stuff, but as we were speaking about this, that may hit all of the high points going forward and such. So our planning project team, they're already reaching out. We will, of course, keep you posted on that. We didn't want to jump up and say, here's what we're doing without any type of aspect. Now, the other part, though, is that, which we'll have to bring to the commission, and I just want to slightly daylight this. As Commissioner Pickering stated, one of those projects is the 5 Mile area. There may be a better utilization of those federal funds if they apply, not on the 5 Mile project. That could be maybe put over here. But again, going back to that focus on pedestrian infrastructure, connecting all of Ada County with these dollars. And, it goes to some of the criteria that the raised grants have put forth. It is a long process, it's a complicated process, but that would be something that Commissioner May and I have already talked about, that you might want to consider when you have those discussions with the joint meetings as teeing this one up. Because again, looking at the criteria, a lot of things we should always try, but this one might be have a little bit more success in it, or the potential for success than other words, but it would be a trade-off to take our energy away from this project over here for a while and then focus on pedestrian infrastructure across the district. I just wanted to toss that in for information only.
Thank you.
Yeah, and Madam President, I just think, and Justin was very eloquent in saying, we only have certain amount of staff, right? And for my day job, I write grants all the time, so I know exactly what he talks about. It takes a ton of energy and resources to think through and apply, especially for federal grants. So I totally understand where that's coming from, which is why I feel like it's even more important for us to be strategic and think through, a very large application potentially to fill in a variety of gaps that fall under a certain umbrella, or say, are there ways that certain agencies can take the lead on others and we can play a more support role, but still get the same end goal. So I feel like, there's a lot of different moving parts, but the longer we don't talk about it, the less prepared we will be.
Madam President, I just echo that also from an even older grant writer. Unfortunately, you can't always time your schedule based on what the foundation or the grantor has said. You got to do it by this time, so you do shift things around. My perception is we're not going to see this again. We're not going to see the quantity of resources that are going to be available. Idaho deserves its fair share. It's heavily focused on urban areas. It says Ada County all over it. So we really should be in there and not worry about, maybe we don't quite get that, and let other people take leads, play a role. We have a great partnership because of our resolution we passed last year with VRT in Boise. And I know there's a priority on issues around poverty and homelessness and those sorts of things. And most cities, it's just one person going to another department next door to talk, how do we do a grant together? Here, it's actually one elected agency's got to go to another elected agency. But we can do that. I'm convinced we can do that. I do agree. I think in listening over years at Compass, sort of the old part of Chinden's kind of been ignored.
Yep.
There's a lot of excitement about keep expanding Chinden further west. Well, out to Canyon County and so forth. But the demands and the kind of issues I think that the raise grants address are something along Chinden and along State Street. I think there's a real great opportunity. And, pride of ownership, let's not let that get in the way. Let's move forward as fast as we can. And I'll go back to my neighbors and say, hey, be a little patient. We're trying to get some of these resources. And if it can help replace other things in the 5-year plan in the long run, maybe yours might move up next year, but let's be a little patient because, as you know, it's highly unlikely something like this is going to come around in the next 10 years, maybe in my lifetime. So, yes, thank you, Commissioner Pickering, for lighting a fire, and thank you, staff, for prioritizing this.
And I think we talked about earlier of having a couple work sessions and getting a little bit more information on some of the prioritizations, the capital projects, et cetera. So we'll be talking to you. He's nodding his head. He knows I'm looking at him, Justin and Director Wong. So that, go ahead.
That sounds great. So yeah, and that dovetails into my other item that I wanted to share. So, you know, last week we talked about the roundabout. There was a lot of discussion about it. You know, we had the statesman highlight some nuances with it as well. And I feel like I don't want to drop the ball. And I think we should have a conversation in a work session on, and this is where my question is. I was looking to you, Justin or Bruce. Does it make sense to dive into the, you know, master street map or the CIP first to understand, you know, what currently is the vision for a lot of our county for these larger projects? Which should come first? Because I think that we need to have that conversation.
Priorities.
Yep, exactly.
Madam President, Commissioner Pickering, our suggestion would be we delve into the master street map. We have that on tap for, I believe, April, and then that will lead your discussions into the CIP going forward.
Is there any way to bump it up into March or?
Honestly, I'm going to say no, based on the workload that's going on right now. Of course, we'll look at it. Commissioner May will come back to you, but it's just not an ACHD issue. It is a city process. It is a lot of staff interaction. We'll see what we can do. And some of you have been through this before. You know what I'm talking about. But we'll take a look. I don't want to be over optimistic on this one. But we can probably do it as quickly as possible at the front of April.
A little closer.
I was going to say, sooner the better.
We appreciate
Thank
it.
you. I have your direction.
Okay, thank you.
Thanks, Madam President. I would just
Else?
echo that, and Commissioner Pickering, you know, I think part of our job leading up to that is just to dive into the stuff we have,
Yeah.
ask lots of questions. You know, what about this one? What about this one? Not just of staff, but also of the cities where they're located, and say, is this really what you want? So, yeah, I think we have some homework to really dive into those segments, because, you know, a lot of them we just haven't been talked about. And if we don't change them, staff has nothing but the right to assume that's what we want.
And we can get some additional staff updates from Mr. Lucas and his team. They're engaged with the cities right now, having those discussions on their priorities and what's on their radar. So that would be helpful too. Just keep us in the loop on that. We'd appreciate it. All right, any other comments or?
Well, I just want a little bit of brownie points, because you said, I want to see questions. So I did
Yes,
some questions.
Yes,
I
you
wrote
did.
3 questions.
Very
They're
good.
a little wordy, but I have no worries that, yes, you can. Steve's like, what? Hanson, wordy? So anyway, get your questions in to Commissioner May.
Absolutely.
Okay.
Absolutely. I'm very proud of you, by the way.
Thanks.
Yeah,
This-
surprised and proud, yes.
The surprise. The second is, I really, really appreciate Christine honestly telling us what it would take to put a spreadsheet together to figure out if we were to have 2 service areas. I'd really like to move on that. And I'd like us to just, you know, because it's not super complicated, because we used to have service areas. And if you just have 2, have a spreadsheet, then we can move things around after you do the basic formulas with what was constructed over the last 10 years. So I think it's very doable, and I'd like to see us move forward on that.
President May.
Commissioner Pickering.
So just quick clarification. So Commissioner Hanson, so that would be just to have like a target to understand what the formula could be, and just using kind of what was previously looked at, and then having that be informed as part of our, you know, data collecting process for, as relates to the impact fee ordinance conversation, right?
It's a key component. Boise has asked us specifically to return to service areas. I think that we owe it to them, we owe it to ourselves to know what that would mean, what that would look like. That's a piece of knowledge that we don't have. And it's not going to be perfect when we first do it, but then we can debate, okay, actually this project that we built 5 years ago, should be allocated this way, we can do that, but you have to have kind of the basic spreadsheet in order to do that. So I'd like us to move forward, get that basic spreadsheet done, and before we dump a whole lot of budget stuff on Christine in the springtime, it sounds like something that could be accomplished.
President May.
Commissioner Pickering,
I would be really supportive of that just as a starting off point, because I don't think that that's,
discussion.
as a
right?
discussion,
Yeah.
you know, and I think that that would be, and to your point, Commissioner Hanson, she's gonna be so busy with the budget. I just think that could blend in well nicely. And then I think just having us longer it would give us more time to digest and congeal Gary's thoughts and ideas as well.
Mr. Daigle, welcome.
Commissioner Paul Daigle, Chief of Staff, for the record. Just a point of clarification, we start the budget process at the end of this month with the first presentation. So you want her to stop everything to do this and then push the budget process down the road?
No, we're not gonna push the budget process off.
I think you can do both. I've seen Christine do amazing things, and I'd like it to do both, because it informs how we're gonna view the impact fee ordinance and the impact fee statute.
Director Wong?
Madam President, Commissioners, based on your direction, we will we will see how we can incorporate that into the current plans we have for your budget process. It won't be done next week. It will probably be closer to the end of when you have your division presentations to set the stage. And then we can work with Christine when she comes back on those 3 formal sessions that you have that talks about revenue, balancing, and then final downstream. We can probably incorporate that into that point right there, if that'll give you the right tools that you're looking for. But as the Chief of Staff said, we're already writing hard to present to you on the 23rd of February that first series. And as you know, you have 4 series of those presentations afterwards. It is going to be I'm going to call it trial by fire. That's why I'm throwing the Chief of Staff in there first, and such, because we have an idea of what we think that you want. We're going to look for your recommendations after his team's presentation to refine the next group, the next group, and the next group, and then we can probably put that in as Christine starts the 3-month process of wrapping things together. I hope that would be satisfactory.
Madam
I
President,
don't think it's complicated.
Yeah,
on the,
thank you, Director Wong.
Thank you.
Commissioner
on the
McKinney?
service areas question, let me say I am, I guess the best way to say it is I'm predisposed against going back into that. We had service areas in the past, and I think the reasons why we went away from it were good reasons. And going back to it, it's not just the additional work and so on that the director is talking about, but it's also the fact that dividing the county into service areas, number one, it's going to be arbitrary in some respect, no matter how we draw it. That'll be arbitrary boundaries. Number two, it will hinder our ability to allocate impact fees to places where they're needed most. And I think the comments that were made earlier, based on the Chamber of Commerce event earlier, about the terrible need that we have, terrible isn't the right word, but the urgent need we have to expand all these 2-lane roads that we've got in the county. I'm on board with that. I think that should be our primary objective, one of our primary goals, and the impact fees are designed for specifically that kind of purpose. And if we start dividing things up into service areas, then we make that harder. We make it harder to use those impact fees in those places where they're most badly needed right now. And so for that reason, I think it would be a mistake to go in this direction.
Okay, thank you very much.
Commissioner May, if I could make a recommendation for the
Director Wong.
commission again. Now, we understand, number one, it is always a majority direction of the commission for us to take different paths across the board. That being said, we can start that process downstream, as I indicated, and that gives the commission time to continue to discuss what it is you want, what it is you don't want, and that will save the staff some time.
Right. I don't want to derail the budget process.
Because it
We've got
is complicated, and there is a lot of moving pieces on this right now,
We've got
which
that
you'll
mapped
see
out.
in 2 weeks.
Or,
President May.
yeah, but we can have that
keep going.
discussion. Go ahead.
Well, I just want to clarify that this isn't about moving forward with an ordinance. It's just about collecting data to help inform that conversation. So you might be opposed to it, which is fine, but they're two separate things, being opposed to the idea of it or being opposed to the idea of us collecting more data to inform that decision about whether or not that ordinance should be passed with service areas in it. So just wanted to clarify that those are two separate things, and what we're asking for is just more information to inform that conversation.
I think that's what Director Long was saying.
Exactly.
A little bit further into the budget process, so.
So we have
The
support to
question was
collect that
asked,
data.
if we wanted to stop the budget process and put it over here, the answer is no. We want to keep that going and on track.
And to collect that data. Yeah, I don't see it as a trade-off between the two. I think it's important because we knew this decision was coming up. And I think it's important that we move forward with data, with information. So I have one more question, and that is, a couple of weeks ago, I gave you a draft speed management policy. I encourage you to keep reading that. In fact, I keep hearing, I really appreciate reading the responses from staff when people ask for increases in speeds. And now that we have Josh Sack back, he wrote a really good one. He says, slow drivers down. It's the character of the street that needs to change rather than the number on the speed limit sign. As drivers recognize an unreasonably posted speed limit, they simply disrespect it. So I think we understand what it takes, and that's why I think it's important. It's much like the prioritization on snow removal. We can't do it all, but we have to have figure out a way to prioritize. So I'd like us to move on that. And that's one I don't think will take a lot of staff time. I think we just say, do we want a prioritization? And then put that into the 5-year integrated plan process. So hope you all have read it and have some comments back.
All right, super. Any other comments? You're very welcome.
Thank you.
All right. All right, Commissioner McKinney, good? Okay, we are adjourned.